A couple of months ago, I made a video about the circle of fifths, and I got a lot of comments on that video from people asking, how can we actually use this, or how can I apply the circle of fifths to music? So, in this video, I'm going to go over 7 different ways that you can apply the circle of fifths to music or something you're playing. If you haven't seen that video, I strongly recommend you watch that one first, because I go over a bunch of things in that video that I'm not going to go over in here. And you should really watch that one before watching this one. So, I will put the link to that video in the description below, and let's continue on. So first, let's quickly talk about what the circle of fifths is. Its full name is really the circle of fourths and fifths, but since that's sort of a mouthful for people to say, it often gets shortened to just the circle of fifths or the circle of fourths. Okay, so what is the circle of fifths? It's a very cool visualization of the 12 pitches in Western music, and when we arrange them in this specific order around a circle, some very interesting patterns emerge. The letters written around the outside of the circle can represent a few different things. They can represent notes, chords, major scales, or major key signatures. And sometimes you'll see the circle of fifths written with chord names on the inside of the circle. And those on the inside are representing the relative minor scales, relative minor key signatures, or relative minor chords. So we are going to go over 7 different ways that you can actually use a circle of fifths in music and you're playing. Number 1, the circle of fifths is a great way to figure out your major scales if you don't have them memorized. When I was first trying to memorize my major scales, the circle of fifths really helped me out, since it tells us how many sharps and flats are in each scale and which notes are sharpened and flattened. By having the circle of fifths memorized, I was always able to figure out what the notes were in every major scale before I truly had those scales memorized. Of course, the goal is to have our major scales on instant recall, so if somebody says, hey, what are the notes in an E major scale, you can say without any hesitation, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, right? But before you get to that point, it's helpful to be able to at least just figure out the names of the notes in each scale on your own, even if it takes a minute. That's such a better way to figure out the notes than just simply Googling what are the notes in an E major scale. You'll never memorize them if you just do it that way. It's really important to actually work through it in your head or on a piece of paper every time you want to remember the names of the notes in a scale. And even though there are a few different ways you could figure out the notes in your major scales, for instance, moving up in half steps and whole steps, I still think that using the circle of fifths is the best way because it's really going to be helpful to have a strong visualization and understanding of the circle of fifths in your brain for other reasons in music too, which I'm going to go over in the 6 other reasons in this video. Every time you have to think about this circle and visualize it, it's going to sink more and more in, and it will just make you a better musician. So here would be the steps I would take if I were trying to figure out the notes in a major scale using the circle of fifths, okay? First, I would just think about the circle of fifths and think about where E flat is on the circle. And when you first start out, you'll probably have to draw the circle of fifths on a piece of paper really quickly every time you do it, which is totally fine. But as you get more and more familiar with it, you should just start to try to create it in your head, because it's actually very beneficial to try memorizing it in your head and visualizing it in your head. There's something to that. But when you start out, do it on a piece of paper, that's great. So you're looking at the circle either in your head or on a piece of paper that you've just drawn out, and you think, okay, E flat is at the 9 o'clock place on the circle, right? Which means it has, 1, 2, 3 flats in it, right? And the first 3 notes in the order of flats are B flat, E flat, A flat. Therefore, an E flat major scale would be E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and D. If you have no idea what I just did or what I was talking about, then I know that you did not watch my other circle of fifths video. So go watch that right now, because I break this down into much greater detail, and then come back. Again, the link for that is in the description below. Okay, number 2. It's a great way to figure out how many sharps or flats are in a key signature. Now, if you're reading a piece of sheet music that has the key signature written in the music, you can already see how many sharps or flats are in the key signature, so this isn't necessary. But if you were playing a chord chart, for instance, that didn't have the key signature written in, or if you were playing something without any sheet music, and maybe someone just said to you, hey, we're going to play this song in the key of B major, you need to know how many sharps or flats are in that key. So if that person said, hey, we're playing in the key of B major, you can stop and think about the circle of fifths in your head, envision where is that B on the circle, right? And you'd say, okay, it's at the 5 o'clock place, right? So that means it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sharps in it. And you can just think about your order of sharps, which is F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Think about what are those first 5 notes. You're going to have an F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and an A sharp. And then you know the notes in a B major key signature. And why is this helpful if you're just trying to play something by ear? Well, if you know which notes are sharpened or flattened in the key signature, and the melody is pretty diatonic, meaning that the melody uses a lot of notes that are connected to the key signature, then it's going to be much easier to figure out the notes in the melody if you already know what are the sharpened notes in that key signature. Again, if that confuses you, please go watch my other circle of fifths video where I really break it down in more detail. Number 3, it visually shows you how close certain key signatures are to each other. So we're going to be thinking of these letters on the outside of the circle as our major key signatures, okay? And I can see that, you see how this key of C major, it's very close to the key of G major, right? It's also very close to the key of F major. However, it's really far from the key of F sharp major, right? And so what it means when I say that they're close is that they literally have many more of the same notes in common with each other, and more chords in common as well. For instance, note-wise, the only difference between the key of D major and the key of G major is that the key of D major has a C sharp, while the key of G major has a C natural. The only difference between the key of G major and the key of C major is that the key of G major has an F sharp, and the key of C major has an F natural. Otherwise, they have the same notes. The key of B flat major, for instance, has a lot of notes in common with the key of E flat and F, and even C and A flat and stuff. And when we get further away, the key of E major has very few notes in common with the key of B flat. Because with the circle of fifths, we can really, truly visually see that they're actually quite far apart from each other. So this is a really cool visualization for us. And why is it important to know how close certain key signatures are to one another? Well, if I were playing a song in, let's say, the key of C major, it's very common that when you're playing in a certain key signature, you borrow chords that are from the key signatures that are very close to it. So if I'm playing in the key of C, you're probably going to find some chords that are in the key of G or the key of F as well, because they blend so well together, because they have a lot of the same notes in common. I really like to think of key signatures as geographical locations, and the circle of fifths really sort of lays that out for you, that you can really imagine these as different places in a space. And for instance, if I'm playing a song in the key of G major and I borrow some chords from the key of D major, or maybe I've been sort of moved to the key of D major temporarily in the song, it doesn't feel like I've made this great shift. In fact, you probably wouldn't even notice it if you were listening to it very, very easily. It sounds like if I'm, in Manhattan, I'm just sort of going to Brooklyn or Queens or somewhere pretty close by. It has the same kind of feel, right? Whereas if I'm going from G to the key of D flat, it's going to sound like I'm going from Manhattan to India or to Pakistan or to China or someplace really far away, and you can really hear it in the music. And that can be a cool effect to shift to a different key signature that's really far away. You'll feel it in the music that you're being taken to this sort of strange foreign place, and that can have a very powerful effect. So it's really cool to be able to see here on the circle of fifths visually how close and how far apart these key signatures really are from one another. Okay, number 4, it can show you the relative minor key signature, relative minor scale, or relative minor chord. I really don't want to spend a lot of time in this video talking about relative minor because I made a whole video just about relative minor, and I will link that in the description below as well. And in that video, I talk all about what it is and how to use the circle of fifths to find it as well. But if I were to give a very brief description of what relative minor means, relative keys are 2 key signatures, one major and one minor, that have the exact same notes in them. So for instance, the key of C major and the key of A minor have the same notes in them. The key of C major is C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The key of A minor is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You notice that they both have no sharps or flats in them. They have the exact same notes. They just are starting in different spots. That's what relative keys are. And with our circle of fifths, you can always move over 1, 2, 3 spaces with the major keys to figure out what the relative minor key is. For instance, in the key of C major, 1, 2, 3, I get to A, so A minor is my relative minor key signature of a C. What's the relative minor of G? Right, so this is the key of G major. We move over 1, 2, 3, I get to E. So the relative minor of G is E minor, okay? What about the relative minor of D major? What's that? I move over 1, 2, 3, I get to B. So B minor is my relative key. What about the relative minor of A flat, right? I'm gonna keep moving this direction. So 1, 2, 3, F. So it's F minor is my relative key. Okay, what about the relative minor of E flat? 1, 2, 3, I get to that C, right? So C minor. And so with the circle of fifths, our relative minor keys are written on the inside and the major keys are written on the outside. I'm not going to write the rest of them in because I would rather you just watch that relative keys video instead. But you can see how I just move over 3 spaces clockwise and I get the relative minor key And why is it useful to actually know what your relative minor is? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but just to think of one off the top of my head, if I'm in the key of C major, for instance, it's good to know that my relative minor key is A minor, so we can go back and forth between those two keys very easily. And that can be a very helpful tool if you're writing something, so you can always look to the relative minor key, borrow some interesting stuff from there, and use it in the relative major key. Number 5. This one is quite cool. So the circle of fifths actually can show you what the diatonic chords are of a specific key signature. If you don't know what diatonic chords are, I made a whole video about that, which again, I will link this one as well into the description below. So go watch that. Sorry, I know I'm linking so many videos in the description below, but I actually specifically made a lot of those videos so that then I could make this video. So go watch those, and this is sort of like a culmination of all those things. Basically, diatonic chords are the family of chords that are connected to a specific key. I'm going to really quickly show you how you can find those diatonic chords with the circle of fifths. So in order to do that, I need to write in my relative minor keys on the inside of the circle. So I'm just going to do that really quickly for just a few of these. So let's say I'm in the key of C major, okay? So this is the one I'm focusing on. And I want to figure out what the diatonic chords are in this key. So the major diatonic chords are going to be the chords next to it and this one in the center. So F major, C major, and G major. Those are going to be my 3 major diatonic chords. And remember how I said we can use all these letters on the outside and on the inside to represent chords? Well, so here's an example of how we're using these as chords. So we have an F major chord, C major chord, and G major chord, okay? Then on the inside, my D minor, A minor, and E minor are going to be the minor diatonic chords in this key signature. And then B minor, the one that's right here, is going to be, it's technically a diminished chord. A diminished is a type of minor chord. If you don't know what that means, I have a video about triads. I will link that as well. Sorry, I'm linking so many videos, but I would rather you go watch that and then come back to watch this. So now I could write out my diatonic chords in the key of C major, right? So the 1 chord would be C major. The 2 chord is going to be the D minor, okay? Because C, D minor, we're going up in the scale, C, D, E, F, G, right? We're going to go in alphabetical order. So C, D minor, okay? Then what comes after D minor? Then E minor, because C, D, E. So E minor is the 3rd chord, okay? Then the 4th chord is going to be F major, right? So F. Then the 5th chord is going to be G, right? C, D, E, F, G. So G major. A minor is going to be our 6th chord, A minor. And then B diminished is going to be our 7th chord. So B diminished. The little circle is a shorthand for diminished. So our diatonic chords are C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. Cool? So it always follows this pattern. So no matter which key signature you're choosing on the outside, the diatonic chords are always going to be surrounding that key signature, which is pretty cool. And diatonic chords are really important and helpful to know for so many reasons. Go watch that video I have on diatonic chords if you want to know why. Number 6. It's great for knowing how to move up or down a 5th or up or down a 4th. So what do I mean exactly? Let's think about a scale or a key signature. Let's think about our C major scale. So the key of C major, we start with C, then we go C, D, E, F, G, right? G is the 5th note in that scale. Another name for that 5th degree is the dominant. So if you hear people talking about the dominant, they're talking about that 5th degree. So the relationship between the 1 and the 4 and the 1 and the 5 are incredibly important. And actually the relationship between the 1 and the 5 is probably the most important relationship in all of music. And if you know your circle of fifths well, you'll have a better internalized understanding and memory of these relationships between 1 and 4 and 1 and 5. And the reason why the dominant is so powerful is because it really leads us back to the home base of 1. So it really creates a lot of tension. For instance, if I'm in the key of C major, just listen to this. This is my home base. I just played a C major chord, okay? Now if I play the 5th degree chord, or the dominant chord, it sounds like this. So when I play that chord, suddenly there's a lot of tension and it feels very unresolved, right? So this 5th degree really wants you to come back home to the 1. And so it's a really strong example of creating tension and then resolution. And really that's sort of what's going on constantly in music. You know, why does music sound good? Why does it sound exciting? Or, you know, there's a bunch of reasons why it could sound good and exciting. But when you really boil down what's happening harmonically is that we're constantly creating these moments of tension and resolution. So when I play that G7 chord and then I go back to the C, I feel sort of tension, and resolution, right? It's very common that before a C chord, you have a G chord. It's very often that you're gonna have the 5 chord written before the 1 chord. Not always, of course, you can put any chord in front of that C chord, but it's just something that you're gonna see happening in all kinds of music, all different genres. Why is it good to know this? Well, it's good to start recognizing these relationships in the music that you're playing, so that you can begin to identify them better, whether it's by your ear or just by reading it, that when you see, a 1 and a 5, or when you hear it, you'll recognize it and identify it as that. Now, the 4th degree is important. That's called the subdominant, and the point of the subdominant is that it leads us to the dominant. So, bear with me. So if I'm still in this key of C. If I go to the subdominant, which is that F chord, so F is the 4th degree of C, right? So if I'm thinking about my C major scale, C, D, E, F, right? It's the 4th note in the scale. So I'm going to play that F major chord. F major chord really wants to lead me to the dominant, right? So that's why it's called the subdominant. If you listen, it really sounds like it wants to go to that dominant chord, and then the dominant leads us back home to the 1 chord again. So you're going to come across this relationship between 1 and 4 and 1 and 5 in music very often. So it's good to know what it is. So what does this have to do with the circle? Well, if you remember, this is called the circle of 4ths and 5ths. So it's literally what's in the name of the circle. So perhaps this is the most important usage of the circle. But what's happening is that when we move clockwise, okay, so this direction, we're moving up in 5ths, okay? And when we move this direction, we're moving up in 4ths, okay? So what do I mean by that? If I'm in the key of C major and I'm moving up, I'm ascending to a G, so I'm getting higher, C, D, E, F, G, right? I get to the 5th note, which is G. So now think, what's the 5th degree of G? So we'll think about our G major scale, G, A, B, C, D. The 5th degree is D. And look right there, see, it's D. Now the 5th degree of D is A, right? So D, E, F sharp, G, A, the 5th degree is A. So lo and behold, it's the next one in the circle. And as we keep going up, it works all the way around, even when we're, even back at the end when we're going from F to C again, right? So when we're ascending, we're moving up in 5ths. And when I say ascending, I mean we're getting higher. So I'm going C, D, E, F, G, right? I'm not going C, B, A, G. I'm not going down from C. I'm going up from C. So I'm playing notes that are getting higher. I'm going C, D, E, F, G. I'm going up. So we're ascending in 5ths, okay? Now if I go this direction, I'm ascending in 4ths, okay? So what do I mean by that? Let's look at that key of C major again. So let's say I'm starting on a C major scale. So I've got my C, and then I want to move up to the 4th degree of C. Is going to be C, D, E, F, right? C, D, E, F. The 4th degree of C is F. And look, it's right there. The 4th degree of F is B flat. The 4th degree of B flat is E flat. The 4th degree of E flat is A flat. So we move up in ascending 4ths, counterclockwise, and we move up in ascending 5ths clockwise. Now, I don't want this to confuse you too much, but when we move descending, so when we're playing one note and then moving down, getting lower, so it would be like playing a scale backwards. Then, when we move this direction, we're moving in descending 4ths, and then when we move this direction, we're moving in descending 5ths. So what I mean by that is, if I'm starting on this C, okay, so I'm going to start on this C, and I want to go down a 4th, okay? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I get to the note G. I played C, B, A, G. I'm just going down the scale backwards, but now I'm going down. I'm descending, not ascending. And so that 1, 2, 3, 4. So now the G is a 4th down. So if you think about it, C, if you just think about the note C, if I move from C up to G, it's actually a different distance than if I move C down to G, okay? So this is an important concept to understand. I'll show you on a keyboard as well. Okay, so if you just look visually at the piano, here's my C, and if I move up to G or down to G, do you see how this is a bigger distance than this is? Right? This is a bigger distance than this. So that's why they're not the same interval. So when I'm going from C up to G, I'm moving up a fifth. And when I go from C down to G, I'm moving down a fourth, okay? And see, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going up to the fifth note in the scale. So that's my fifth. And if I go down, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. I went down just 4 notes. So hopefully that's not too confusing. I'm actually planning on making a video very soon about intervals, so we'll go into more detail about this in that video. But it's important to understand this, that when we move between 2 notes, it really does matter if it's ascending or descending, because it's going to be a different distance between those 2 notes if you're ascending or descending. So basically when we move clockwise, we move in fifths ascending and fourths descending, and when we move counterclockwise, we're moving in fourths ascending and fifths descending. Whew! I know that might be a lot to soak in right now. Don't worry about it too much. If you don't even want to think about the descending stuff right now, you don't need to. For now, you could just think about the fifths and fourths ascending. So if you move clockwise, it's fifths ascending. If you move counterclockwise, it's fourths ascending. First, just think about that. Don't worry about the descending right now, but it is good to know both. All right, and now we're at the last one, number 7. You can use a circle of fifths to transpose music. If you're transposing something just a half step or maybe 2 half steps, this wouldn't be the best way to do it. But if you're transposing a song a big distance, this could be a very helpful tool. Okay, for instance, let's say I'm taking a song and the chords in the song are
A minor, F, G7, and C, okay?
So these are my 4 chords: A minor, F, G7, and C. So let me show you what it sounds like. So I'm playing A minor, F, G7, and C. So let's say I want to transpose the song up a fifth, okay? So I want to make the entire song a fifth higher. So I'm going to find the root of each of these chords on the circle. So doesn't matter what type of chord it is, doesn't matter if it's a minor chord, a sharp 11, doesn't matter what, as long as you keep those other details the same if you're just changing the roots, okay? And I want to make soon a video that's all about transposing, but I will go over it briefly right now. So what's the root note of the chord A minor? The root is just A, okay? So where's my A on the circle? Here's my A. So if I wanted to move this chord up a fifth, all I need to do is move it up a fifth like that. I just move it one over clockwise, right? Because remember, when we go like in this clockwise direction, we're moving in ascending fifths. So I move it up, I get to E. So I would just turn this chord into an E minor. So I'll write that right here, E minor, okay? Now, what about my F chord? I want to move that up a fifth as well. It's just an F major chord. So I'm going to find F on the circle. Here's F. I move it up a fifth, I get to C. Okay, so the next chord is going to be a C. What about G7? I want to move that up a fifth too. So I find my G, I move it up a fifth, and it's D, so D7. Cool. What about my C? I want to move that up a fifth. Well, here's my C. I move it up a fifth, and I get to G, so that'll just be G major. So now, if I were to play this little chord progression a fifth higher, okay, it would sound like this. E minor, C, D7, and G. And just so you know, this would work with melody notes as well, not just chords. Anyway, something that's cool about transposing is we could shift these chords to any key signature we wanted, or move it higher or lower, however much we want to. The only thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we move every single chord or every single note in the song the same amount. So you just have to shift everything the same amount. So what I mean by that is, you know, when we transposed it just now, we were moving everything up exactly 1/5, right? But let's say I wanted to transpose these chords to another key, and I don't know exactly what it is or how far away it is, but I know that I like it when it starts with instead of an A minor, when it starts with a G minor, okay? I like how it feels when it starts on a G minor. It moves it to a key that's nice for my singing voice, so I want to move it to that key. Okay, maybe that's all you know. So I know I'm gonna first change it to a G minor, okay? But let's use our circle of fifths to transpose the rest of the chords, okay? So let's first find our A, the root A. So here's my A, and here's the G. I moved it to get from A to G. I had to move it 2 spaces counterclockwise, right? So I go A to D to G to get to that G minor. So if that's what I did, I just have to do that with all these chords now. So for instance, my next chord is an F, so I'm going to find F, and I'm again going to just move it counterclockwise to 2 spaces. So I'm going to go B flat and then E flat. So that means my next chord is going to be an E flat major. So G minor, E flat major. Then my G7 chord, okay, the root is G, so here's my G. Again, I just have to make them all consistent, so I'm going to move that 1, 2 spaces counterclockwise. I get to F, so I'm going to play F7. And then my last chord is C, so here's my C, and I'm going to move that one also counterclockwise 2 spaces. So 1, 2, I get to B flat. So now I just transposed it to a different key. So now if I were to play these chords, it sounds like this. G minor, E flat, F7, E flat. Cool. So yeah, the circle fifths can be a very cool tool to use for transposing, because as I said, we can, as long as we shift everything the same amount of spaces in either direction, then it's cool. So I hope you found this video helpful. I have some worksheets that are available on my Patreon. I have all kinds of music theory worksheets and practice sheets. They're all printable PDFs on my Patreon. I also have lots of ukulele chord charts as well. I will link all the videos I mentioned in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've made it this far in the video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet already, please do. I post 1 new video a week and I would love to have you here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, or if you have any questions as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day or night.